Welcome to the Stop Ruining My Childhood podcast.
A sometimes nostalgic, sometimes cynical look back at pop culture.
Join us as we revisit movies, cartoons, and live-action TV of the 80s and 90s and ask the question,
does this hold up, or did I just ruin my childhood?
My name is Megan.
And I'm Steve.
And if you haven't listened to us before, we have a cycle of what we watch. So 1 week we watch a cartoon, 1 week we watch a live-action TV show, and 1 week we watch a movie. So last week we reviewed and revisited the A-Team. And
we did.
This week...
First off, if you haven't heard us before, go back and start at the very first episode.
Yes.
And catch up. Don't cheat and decide you're going to jump in
Listen.
When we're 10 episodes in.
Listen, so today we're reviewing Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Yes.
If that is your favorite movie and that's how you found us, jump in here. And if you don't find us too annoying, go back and listen to the other ones.
Also, if you're on our website or our blog, feel free to reach out to us. This is actually Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory episode we're recording right now. It was actually a fan request. One of our listeners requested it specifically, and we threw it in.
Yeah, so I want to say a shout out to Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie just got signed with an agent for her newest book. Mm-hmm. So shout out to Anne-Marie. So this was actually a suggestion she gave us for Easter. But and one of the reasons is because Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory was played a lot during Easter holiday. But we really felt like as Christians we wanted to cover something that was a little more related to Easter directly, not just about candy. But we thought we'd put it in April. So this is why we're doing this today. So I think it was a great suggestion. But before we get into the movie, we are going to try our nostalgic candy.
Our nostalgic snack, non-sponsored, of today is the Gobstopper. To go along with Willy Wonka, the everlasting Gobstopper.
That's the sound of it shaking in the box.
That's the sound in the box, right like that. If you haven't had it before, it is a hard candy. It's a jawbreaker that changes colors and flavors.
Yeah. So this is actually, it's interesting to me. This is something that is introduced in the movie.
Yep, and that actually plays a pretty significant role.
And that's why we picked it for today, even though the book was kind of inspired by Cadbury, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But the everlasting Gobstopper was actually introduced in 1976. So 5 years after the movie, a Chicago candy company, Breaker Confections, which is a subsidiary of Quaker, and Quaker did sponsor the film.
Okay.
So that's why they have the official... if you get everlasting Gobstoppers, and if you can't find them, we'll link them on our blog, Watch With Us. But they do say they have the Willy Wonka logo. And the Willy Wonka logo is there because Quaker sponsored the film. So that's, I think, kind of neat. During the production of the film, they did Scrumdiddlyumptious bars, which were like chocolate with caramel. And then they did peanut butter Oompas, which were like a cross between M&M's and Reese's Pieces.
Okay.
But... the Willy Wonka, they got the name in 1971, so their candy could be used for tie-ins. So there are a number of different types of everlasting Gobstoppers. They all change flavor one time, and then they have an inner... the inner part is supposed to be watermelon. I don't know if I'm getting that.
I don't think I've gotten to the inner part yet.
I have one that is... mine was cherry, and then it changed to orange. And you really can't tell the difference in the flavor.
Yeah, I can definitely get the different
flavors. What color
flavors.
did you get?
Orange on the outside.
And then now you're at lemon?
Yeah, that sounds
I can
about
see
right.
it in your mouth. It's yellow.
That sounds about right. The only thing I'm wondering about is this. This is like you bought a box that's like movie candy size. Mm-hmm. Okay, that means that there's judging from what I read on the back of the box, there's roughly 81 Gobstoppers in this box.
It would take forever.
It would take forever. It's not something you can like chow down during a movie.
There we go.
Like the Gobstopper takes a little while to like wear down.
Yeah,
hence
we
the
actually
everlasting name.
I'm biting them to the center right now.
I got mine too.
But we started eating these before we started recording.
Yeah.
Because they do take so long. Sorry if you can hear that, guys. It's just our dog kind of walking around there. She wants us to talk to her instead of you. But I'm getting the watermelon in the middle.
Yeah.
I kind of like it.
Yeah.
If I hadn't known that it was watermelon, I don't know that I would have guessed that.
It's fruity.
This is, I think, this is a movie candy that you take to, like, the drive-in and you share with, like, 6 other people.
Yeah, at least. Or it lasts you, like, a week.
Well, or if you're a kid who just, like, really wants to bite into it, and get in there.
Really ruin your teeth.
So, unlike the ones from the book and the movies, the one in the movie is, like... It looks more like, I think of like a sprocket. I know that's not really what it is.
Yeah, it's not round. It's like almost like a Japs.
Yeah, It's got like a lot of different globs on there. And it's meant for children with very little candy money. So if they don't have...
forever.
So it lasts forever. This didn't last forever, but it lasted a pretty long time. So we always rate 1 out of 5 for the snack and 1 out of 10 for the movie. And of course, we have to do golden tickets.
Okay.
So out of 5 golden tickets, what are you going to rate the Gobstopper?
Well, let's say, it's tasty.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I'm not a huge fan of hard candy all the time.
Yeah.
About the only hard candy I really mow down are Fireballs.
We're not. I don't think we can review
I
those.
do like fruity candy, so I guess I'll give it a 3 golden tickets.
Okay. Yeah, I'm about the same. I mean, we've been reviewing chocolate, and I didn't say this last time, but I ate probably 4 of those caramel Cadbury eggs before buying the ones that we had for the show. I was having a sweet tooth moment, and I was like, yeah, well, you can always find more. So chocolate's more my thing, but I would rate these a 3 as well. They're good. I liked the flavor change. I thought that was kind of neat. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I would eat more than like 2 or 3 because they take a while. But, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe if you don't want your kids to have that much sugar, you could give them a Gobstopper and then it lasts a little bit longer than, say, like popping a handful of M&Ms,
Yes.
So I don't like the huge jawbreakers. I just always found those uncomfortable to try to eat, the really big ones that you used to get when like at the quarter machine in the grocery store. And also they make me think of that movie Jawbreaker.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But okay, so pause for effect. Yeah. 3 out of 5 golden tickets for Everlasting Gobstoppers.
We're in agreement. 3 out of 5.
We're actually in agreement on this. So let's see if we're in agreement on the movie. Well, we're going to talk about the history of the movie. I have a lot of fun facts. So Steve's going to give an overview. I'll go into a little bit of the history and some of the fun facts. I also have where the kids are today.
Oh, okay.
So
excellent.
We'll talk about that, and then well break, and then we'll do our full review and recap.
So summary of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
We are going to spoil it.
Yes.
But
it was filmed in 1971, so if you haven't seen it yet, you've had 50 years.
Yeah,
I feel
crazy.
like you should be able to see it. If you have not, though, a basic summary of the movie. It takes place in England in the early 1970s, obviously, and Willy Wonka is this recluse chocolatier who owns a chocolate factory and makes all sorts of candies, and he has been shut in for 20 years in his candy factory. At one point, people from other candy factories were trying to send spies in.
Mr. Slugworth.
Slugworth was Arthur Slugworth of Slugworth Candies was his biggest competition, but they were trying to send in spies as workers, and so one day Willy Wonka just shut the factory down and kicked everybody out. 3 years after it shut down, all of a sudden the lights and everything came back on. The factory started running, but the gates remained closed, and he never brought anyone in. And so that's sort of where we pick up with our main character, Charlie Bucket, who lives with his mom and his 4 grandparents. Very poor, and basically they're trying to save every little ounce they can. And, of course, he's enamored with the chocolate factory, which is in his hometown. And when it's announced that Willy Wonka is going to open up the factory for the first time in 20 years, and so he is spread out amongst all of his candy 5 golden tickets across the globe, and whoever finds those tickets in their candy wins admission to his chocolate factory, and also they get a lifetime supply of chocolate. So of course everyone in the world goes crazy looking for these tickets, and one by one they start getting found by the other main children in this story. So Augustus Gloop in Germany finds the first ticket. And he is a kind of chunky kid. Him and his parents just eat tremendous amounts of food. Matter of fact, his dad eats the microphone during the interview.
Yes.
The second one is Veruca Salt. Her father basically gives his daughter anything she wants. She's spoiled rotten. Violet Beauregard gets the third ticket, and she is a gum-chewing champion. And
she is basically chomping the entire time.
Yeah, she always has gum in her mouth.
Yeah.
And then Mike TV, also from America, never stops watching TV. He's dressed as a little cowboy. Matter of fact, he won't even stop watching TV to have the interview. And his mom says he'll only answer questions on TV breaks. Yeah. And so they're the first four. Charlie's still hopeful. He only opens 2 candy bars because that's all he actually has the money for. And then eventually someone finds the 5th ticket, but it comes to find out that was a ruse and it was fake. And so just as Charlie thinks that all hope is lost, he finds money to go in and buy chocolate. He buys a candy bar, opens it up, and finds the 5th golden ticket. So the 5 of them all end up going on this tour with a number of things that pop up. You see all these wonderful, awesome things in the chocolate factory. And we'll get into a little bit of that during the recap. And then one by one, each of these kids gets eliminated, basically.
Like the Hunger Games?
Yeah, almost like the Hunger Games. At their own but it's their own fault. It's always something that has to do with their main issues and their main faults. Until Charlie's the only one left. And then at the end, there's your spoiler, Charlie makes the right decision, and Willy Wonka says, I'm giving you the whole chocolate factory, and you and your family can come live here.
The little boy who got everything he ever wanted.
That's true.
That's the end.
And that's the end.
So, yeah, I know I say interesting a lot, but listen, if you don't find the history of this movie interesting, I don't know what you will find interesting. I find it totally fascinating. The book was actually written in 1964. He had a sequel, Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, and for reasons I'll get into in a second, it was not made into a movie. But there might be a Netflix movie of that coming out soon.
Oh, okay.
But it was announced. The Netflix movie was announced December 2019. For those of you who might be listening to this 5 years from now, that was right before COVID hit. So I don't know if it got canceled with all of that kind of going on. But, we talked about Cadbury last week, and he really was actually inspired by Cadbury. Roald Dahl lived in England, and Cadbury is a UK-based company. And essentially, around the 1920s, they had this huge rivalry with another company, and the two companies did try to send spies into each other's factories. And at that point, they started becoming really protective of their chocolate-making processes. But what they would do is they kind of tried to do like an early version of focus groups where they would go to schools and they would give children candies that they were developing, and then the kids would like give them feedback about what they liked best and things like that. So that's kind of where it was inspired, that as a child he had been exposed to that, to different candy companies.
How did Cadbury Egg ever make it past the group?
I don't know. Listen, I don't know. But the full Cadbury Egg didn't make it till 1963.
Okay.
And they still make it, so we don't know. Anyway, so that's basically what inspired this story. Initially in the book, Charlie was of Afro-Caribbean descent, and the Oompa Loompas were African pygmies as well. Okay. And what's interesting is that the editor didn't think that a person of color would be interesting enough for kids to buy the book, because it was the very early 1960s.
Right.
And so the editor changed Charlie to be a white boy. Not that you would, I'm like, how would you even know? It's not like it's written into the text, but I suppose maybe the illustrations. And then there was an outcry after the first version. The NAACP basically said to Roald Dahl, the factory resembles a slavery situation, and they're from Africa, and because of that he basically made some changes to the book. So if you get the original version of the book, the illustrations are different in that regard, and there's some of the text that's different as well. His first draft, there were 10 golden tickets instead of 5.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes the kids were like, there were 2 kids that fell in the river.
Okay.
but I want to read you some of these names. Bertie Upside, Clarence Clump, Miranda Mary Piker, Tommy Troutbeck, and there were some deleted scenes as well. There was a vanilla fudge room, there was warming candies, and there was also spotty powder, which looks like sugar but makes children look like they have spots so they can skip school.
Okay.
Which seems like a great thing to teach kids. Although in the movie we get exploding candy for your enemies, right?
Right.
So basically what happened is that this got optioned for a film, and Roald Dahl hated the movie. He did not like it at all. He didn't like the fact that they had Willy Wonka in the title instead of Charlie. He thought that the music was too smarmy, and he was kind of questioning the casting of Gene Wilder.
Okay. But
basically, he just didn't like it. He thought it was too sentimental, so he kind of disowned the film. And because of that, and also the film didn't make as much money as they were hoping initially. Mm-hmm. So because of those reasons, they never made the sequel. Also because Peter Ostrom, who plays Charlie, they offered him a 3-picture deal, and one of them would have been the sequel. Okay. He turned it down because he just wanted to be a regular kid. His family had horses, and he saw the veterinarian working with the horses, and he was like, I want to do that. I don't like all this. I don't want to be famous. And he's very shy kind of person. So yeah, I mentioned that Quaker Oats helped to support the film so that they could produce this Willy Wonka branded chocolates, and some people think that's why it's Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, because they wanted that alliteration for their candy as opposed to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, right? So a few fun facts about the film itself. It's set in England. It's filmed in Germany. Mm-hmm. And so the boy who plays Augustus Gloop, Michael Ballner, plays Augustus Gloop. He was actually from Germany, and I watched this with the commentary as well one time, and all the kids are on there doing the commentary together. It's really fun if you can find that DVD. But basically, he said he was only filming for like a couple days to do his part. They were just looking for a kid who was kind of chubby, and he fit that, and that's why he has very few lines, because he didn't actually really speak English all that well. He does now,
because he's local from Munich.
Yeah, and so the other 4 kids really got to know each other. The 2 girls basically became best friends, and it seems like maybe stayed best friends, which is fun. So a little bit about what happened to them. Denise Nickerson played Violet. She said that the gum chewing caused major cavities, and also she was given blue dye for the part where she becomes a blueberry, and it was coming out of her pores. Veruca injured her knee in one of the scenes and got a permanent scar. Peter Ostrom, I said he became a veterinarian. And Veruca Julie Cole is a psychotherapist in a hospice for terminally ill children. Denise Nickerson was an actress for a while, but now she's a financial analyst for the aerospace company that helped to find Osama bin Laden.
Okay.
I just think that that's a fun fact. Michael Ballner, who played Augustus, is an accountant. He just basically stayed in Germany, never knew that he was famous at all. And Paris Themin, who played Mike TV, he actually was a Disney Imagineer for a while.
Oh, okay.
And he had a lot of different roles in film and television, and then he became a casting director. So
Mike TV went into TV.
Went into TV, yeah. So a couple of the kids stayed in show business, and a couple just didn't care for it and ended up leaving. But my biggest thing is that they kept some of the information from the kids to get their real reactions. Mm-hmm. One of those, pretty obvious reason, the big scene, which we'll talk about in a little bit, where they fully come into the factory and they see
chocolate room,
the chocolate river, and the fountain. All of that, none of them had seen before. So when Gene Wilder is kind of playing with them, he's doing that on purpose. And the other thing is the boat scene with all the creepy pictures. They did not know what was going to be coming up, so that they would be genuinely genuinely scared and surprised and things like that. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting story of like how it was made and how it affected these kids' lives. And some of them, like, this was just a thing that they did, and it's like a childhood memory, and a lot of them talk about it like going to summer camp because it was just this weird experience that they all had together, and then it was over and they went back to real life. Yeah, so that's a little bit about the history of the film. We're going to take our break here, and when we come back, we'll get into our memories of the movie, and then we'll do our full review and recap. This podcast is supported by its creators
and listeners like you.
Help keep our show ad-free by visiting our website, stopruiningmychildhood.com.
There you can find links to our social media.
And this very podcast you're currently listening to.
Both Megan and I are authors, and you can find links to our books on our About page.
And on our Watch With Us page, you can find videos and links for all the shows and movies we discuss on the podcast.
And more importantly, links to buy the nostalgic snacks we review as well.
We also post bonus content about once a month.
So like, subscribe, and follow.
For a small independent podcast like ours, it really does make a difference. Thanks. And now, back to the show. All right, we are back again. My name is Megan.
And I'm Steve.
And we're going to get into our memories of the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. What do you remember about the movie?
I've seen it. I mean, it was a childhood memory of mine. I saw it a number of times as a kid. I loved it. I think it was just great, to be honest with you. It's interesting that Roald Dahl, one of the things that he wasn't sure about or didn't care for was the casting of Gene Wilder, because Gene Wilder makes the movie.
Yeah.
If you take Gene Wilder out of there, and I think we saw that with the new movie, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, if you take Gene Wilder out of it, you don't have the movie. And I remember him because I was a huge Gene Wilder fan as a kid. You know, if you remember the 80s, Gene Wilder was in everything.
Everything.
You know, he was in a lot of stuff with Richard Pryor. He was in a lot of things. He was just comedic. But also, he started to go into dramas, too. He's just a phenomenal actor. And I think he was so good in this role.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It does take kind of a delicate touch. And we'll talk about that more later. So I have kind of two memories of this. The first is that, you know, I didn't realize till I did the research that it didn't do that well in the box office. I know you're going to touch on that later.
On that a little bit, yeah.
But it really, people who are, I would say, like older Gen Xers who were like born in the early 70s, this movie I don't think is quite as popular with them as it is with people our age and younger. And that is because it was shown at Easter so many times. And like a lot of times this and Wizard of Oz are the two movies that are shown a lot at Easter. And then when it had all these TV showings, it would be shown, like, again, we talked about this, like, HBO didn't have a lot of programming.
Right.
So it was one of those ones that would be shown, like, on HBO or early TBS, like, over and over and over. And it developed kind of a cult following. And I think that that's why I liked it. And then it came out on VHS, which we did have a copy.
Okay.
And my brother and I would watch it a lot. It is certainly around this time of the year. But we would always fast forward through Cheer Up Charlie.
Yes.
Where there's a if you've ever seen John Mulaney, he has a little bit about Charlie's mother making laundry soup and sacrificing for the family. It is a very maudlin scene, so we'd kind of skip over it. And then my second memory is that I was doing like what they called field work for my program at school in college, and thankfully not as bad as when I showed Splash to a 5-year-old, which we talked about earlier.
Talked about that.
But we had this event for, like, we had a family camp-in at this church where we did, like, different camp activities, but inside. It was, like, winter, and all the kids were going stir crazy. So we thought we'd have this little event, and we were like, let's show a movie. Like, we didn't want, like, a church movie. We just wanted, like, a fun family movie. Well, the thing that nobody remembered is that the boat scene, if you were a very little kid, is quite scary.
Yes.
So we're showing this movie, and it gets to the boat scene, and there were probably maybe 30 or 40 little kids there and their families. So some older kids within that. But I would say maybe 3 or 4 of those kids started crying and had to leave. And their families were like, we're just going to go home early. It's fine. Yeah. Like, I felt so bad. But that's one of the things about movies from this era that we've been noticing, that we don't have as many family movies. We have more, like, kids movies and adult movies.
Yeah.
And the movies that are for kids are highly sanitized, and this in a different way than Splash, obviously, but this really isn't. So those are kind of my two memories. Freaking a bunch of kids out at a church.
Yeah.
And I probably haven't seen it in about 5 years. I have it on DVD. You can find this. You can buy it on Amazon Prime. I'm going to link it there. And also right now, it's switching streaming services, so I'm not sure at the moment if it's going to be on Netflix or on HBO, but whichever one it is, when I set up the blog, I'll link it there too, in case anybody wants to see it again. So let's break it down. Does it hold up to our memories?
Let's look at the first chunk first. The first third, I think, of the movie is... doesn't have Willy Wonka in it at all, personally. Yeah. You hear his name a lot, but that's about it. But we see Charlie and his family.
Yeah, so what are some highlights, lowlights for you here?
First off, I like the introduction of the entire theme in the fact that it opens up with kids getting out of school. They run to the local candy shop.
Yes.
And you have the guy running the candy shop sings the Candyman song, which was introduced in this movie.
Yeah.
It was later covered by Sammy Davis Jr., but this was the first introduction of that song.
Yeah, so this music is done by Anthony Newley and Leslie Bricusse, and they also did the songs to the original Dr. Dolittle. They have a very similar setup in Dr. Dolittle, the original Dr. Dolittle, where they have a character basically singing, I know the doctor, and he's telling the whole story of the doctor, and that's kind of what this guy does here. They also, by the way, did the song Goldfinger, and You Only Live Twice. I just find that kind of funny.
They decided to take a James Bond turn.
Yeah, well, when you're doing movie music. But yeah, I agree. I love this song. We don't even see Charlie. But it also sets up this theme of the economic disparity, where there are all these kids in the town who are wealthy, and a lot of the kids that he later is with on the tour are quite wealthy as well. And he really has nothing.
Or at least middle class.
Yeah,
they can go to the candy shop after school.
Yeah.
They're all getting the candy. The Candyman's singing the song. You see all the Wonka bars. And then it turns to the front window of the store, and poor, disparaged Charlie is just standing there looking in almost from the cold.
But it is really a kid's candy dream until you get to the real factory, which is just magnifying that even more. But I also love that, they're eating all this nostalgic candy, some of which we've had for this podcast.
Yes.
They're taking out rows of candy buttons.
Buttons, definitely.
And, which are just so colorful, and they're they're digging into the hard candy, and it's just such a fun scene, and it's a great song, and it's really a fun way to start. And then we have, for me, a weird, I don't know if this is a highlight or a low light, but the tone totally shifts. Charlie's walking home, it's desolate, and there's a tinker with a little, literally panhandling. He's got pans on a cart, and he's pulling it along. And he says this weird rhyme, and then he says, nobody ever goes in and nobody ever comes out.
Yeah, as they're standing outside the locked chocolate factory.
But I never liked that as a kid. As an adult, I kind of appreciate its foreshadowing. It's giving you a little bit of the backstory, and it's setting up that this is a mysterious place. There are two sides of this chocolate factory, right? There's the fun side that we see in the candy shop, where kids are getting sugared up. And then there's this other side where, there might be something sinister going on.
Yeah, the rhyme says something about the little men.
Yes.
Which, of course, you later kind of find out are the Oompa Loompas. But it seems dark.
And we have a whole thing of Charlie and his family. Again, as an adult, I'm watching this differently. The grandpa goes, he works too hard for a little boy. And the mom says, well, with the four of you bedridden for the last 20 years, it takes a lot to keep this household going. And
yeah.
Oh.
You got 4 old people bedridden for 20 years.
Yeah, which is also the length of time that Willy Wonka's chocolate factory has been shut up. And Grandpa Joe, by the way, he looks to be maybe 65. So since
that's what I was thinking.
In the book, Charlie's dad is actually in the picture, and he puts the little caps on toothpaste, but he's replaced by a machine, and that's why they don't have any money. So the toothpaste factory in town's been automated, and a lot of people in town have lost money. But Yeah, he brings in the bread. Charlie's got the bread, and they're like, oh, we're going to have a real feast tonight.
Yeah, it's just a loaf of bread. It's like a baguette.
Steve goes, it's just a loaf of bread. But here's the thing. I will say two things. One, I would guess, without the laughter, that there are probably people for whom a real baked loaf of bread is a treat. Mm-hmm. But the second thing is that really, this is very... Roald Dahl's books, like, they do this. They take a situation like, you know, being impoverished and kind of exaggerate it to the nth degree.
Yeah.
So that when the boon comes... it's even more spectacular, right? James and the Giant Peach is kind of set up the same way. Matilda's got some things there, like with the school and stuff. But I just thought there are these four grandparents, and the mom's trying her best, and they're complaining about, you know, Charlie working too hard and all of that. Any other highlights or lowlights of this part?
Charlie has a real dark attitude as far as, like, nothing ever good happens. Yeah. Like, he's kind of hoping to get the ticket, but at the same time, he's just like, that kind of stuff doesn't happen. Like, I'm never going to get that. You know, and to the point where Mom has to sing Cheer Up Charlie as she's making laundry soup.
But also, Grandpa Joe goes, of course you've got a better shot at it, Charlie, because you want it more.
Yeah, that's not how real world works, Grandpa Joe.
That's horrible advice,
That's
Grandpa
probably
Joe.
what got you in bed for 20 years.
I know. The other low light for me is the teacher. I know it's supposed to be funny, but the teacher is so obnoxious, and I think it's just kind of trying to show that no part of Charlie's life is really that great.
Right.
He goes to school, and he's mocked by the teacher, and a really dumb teacher also, by the way. And then the second part of this very long introduction, we have finally the golden tickets are announced.
Yeah, the golden tickets are announced, and then you get the selection of the tickets and the introduction to each of the 5 children, counting Charlie.
You know, the 5 children is kind of like I like when they do, like, getting the team together, and this is kind of the opposite of that, because these are never going to work as a team.
No. So this is the thing with the kids that as I'm watching it now as an adult, I look at, right? You have your basic surface area issues with the kids. Augustus Gloop eats too much.
Yeah.
Veruca Salt is spoiled. Violet Beauregard is like this gum-chewing champion. She talks too much. She's always telling her mom, shut up.
Yeah.
Right? Mike TV is constantly watching TV, and that's the problem, right? Yeah. But when you look at, now as an adult, I'm looking at it, there's some deeper, and I don't know how deep Roald Dahl was, right? But each one of these kids, you can point to the fact that they represent, like, a major sin.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
Adolphus Gloop is gluttony.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Veruca Salt is greed. Violet Beauregard is pride.
Oh, I was going to say unkindness.
I would think pride cruelty. Because she's always saying, I'm the champion now.
Yeah,
Look at me. I'm so great.
You know,
and Mike TV is wrath.
Yes.
Because in his original opening, he's shooting his guns, he's watching TV, and the reporter says, you know, that's an awful lot of killing, Mike. Do you like that? And he says, what else is life for? I can't reach my real gun. Dad won't let me have it now. And his dad says, not till you're 12. Like, he just wants to hurt people.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And what we have basically, now that you're saying that, I guess it reframes the adult things that are going on in between, because we have a man in Germany who's trying to get therapy, and he's like, the Archangel told me where the golden ticket was. And immediately the guy gets greedy, and he's like, tell me where the ticket is, you fool. Yeah. And then we have this woman who has her husband is being held for ransom, and all they want is her case of Wonka bars, and she's like, how long do I have to think about it?
Yes.
Right? And so
the last case of Wonka bars is being auctioned at, like,
and the Queen takes
the Queen is bidding on it. Yes.
And then we also the computer, which I have to call out old tech alert, because this computer is about the size of a warehouse.
Yes.
And the computer is talking back to the guy, telling him, I'm not going to cheat. I'm not going to tell you where that stuff is.
Yes.
So you do kind of have, like, these kids are supposed to be reflecting the larger problems in society. Having said that, the way that it's structured, to me, it's too long. It's too long. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of boring. But they do have some funny bits. Like, when they first show Augustus, they cut to the reporter. He's standing with these antlers framed right behind his head. Veruca the shot from above with all the workers who had been shelling peanuts, and he goes, "They're working from dawn to dusk," and she goes, "Make them work nights."
Yeah.
Which I don't think I caught.
You don't love me enough, Daddy. You never give me anything, and she's obviously spoiled rotten.
I know, but that line of "make them work nights," I don't think I ever really got before. It just made me laugh. And then, and the mom and the dad, after she gets the ticket, the mom goes, "Happiness and harmony. That's all that counts with children." So there are these lessons there of like, they're trying to make her happy all the time, and they're trying to keep the peace. And by being her friend and keeping the peace, they are spoiling her rotten.
And she's becoming a terrible human being.
Yeah, and I think you're right about Violet with Pride. They did this in the remake, and I think it was in the book too, that she was also the champion of a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
Like she had medals and trophies and that kind of thing. Another little joke in there, this has like just joke after joke after joke, but another little joke in there is that with Mike TV, his mom said he won't talk unless
he's on a commercial break.
And she goes, "I serve all his TV dinners right here."
Yeah.
Yeah, so again,
he's glued to the TV, but it's because they're allowing it. They're enabling him. They haven't made him go out and play. Right. Or step away from the TV.
Yeah. Right. These are a lot of kids who are being mollycoddled by their parents.
And they're all in drastic contrast to Charlie, who cares about his family. He's working a job after school, giving all his money. He's buying food and giving his money to his mom, right? He just cares about his grandpa. Like, you have a very selfless kid versus all of these problems you can see in a kid.
Literally the only selfish thing that Charlie does in this whole movie, he even buys a candy bar and shares it with his grandfather, right? The only selfish thing he does is when he finds a coin in the sewer grate, he goes and buys a scrumdiddlyumptious bar and shoves it in his mouth. But it's pretty clear that he's very hungry at that point, too, because normally he thinks of other people, and then he says, he thinks about it, and he says, "I'm going to buy one more for my Grandpa Joe," knowing that his grandpa likes chocolate.
And that's the one that has the golden ticket in it.
Apparently the other 3 grandparents can die in that bed together. So basically in another lesson, though, that extra candy bar for his Grandpa Joe, his kindness pays off, because that's the one that has the ticket in it.
Yes.
Right? So we kind of skipped over Cheer Up Charlie for a reason. What do you think? Is that the worst part of the movie?
It's pretty sad. Yeah, it's very sad, and it's just, again, I did kind of point to it. It's one of the points where Charlie's just like, I wouldn't get it anyway. Like, why would I? Like,
it's supposed to be really emotional. The woman's voice is excellent. She's a beautiful singer.
It's just a very sad song.
It's just a sad, mopey song, and it really drags down the movie, especially since, look, we haven't said this either, but this beginning part is like 40 minutes long. Yeah. And everybody in the theater or in our bedroom as we're watching this just is like, get to the chocolate factory already. Yeah. And so these parts with like all the adults wanting the tickets and the auction and the computer, blah, 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 it's just holding things up, honestly. But he does get the ticket. And this is my other point of contention. What happens, Steve, when he gets that ticket? Do you know what he does that makes me so mad?
No.
He throws the chocolate in the gutter. Charlie, I'm going to say 2 things. Number 1, we don't throw good chocolate away.
No,
okay? That's our ethical stance. Number 2, I'm sorry if you can hear the dog in the background. Number 2, this is a kid for whom a loaf of bread is like the feast to end all feasts, and he just throws away a good bar of chocolate, and I don't like it.
Understandable, yeah.
I don't like it one bit. Then we have Slugworth come up to him. Now, we've seen Slugworth with every single kid who's gotten a ticket.
We didn't hear what he was saying, but we saw him creepily putting his arm around children and whispering in their ears.
Yeah, he looks like a pedophile.
Yeah.
Like, I'd be... And the parents are just, like, cool with it. I'd be like, so. Why are you a grown man with your arm around my kid?
But he corners Charlie in a tunnel.
Yes.
On the way home.
So here's the deal. He tells him, the plot is that he's got to get the everlasting Gobstopper, and that if he does, he's going to give him $10,000. Enough, I wrote this down exactly, enough for a new house and good food and comfort for you and your family for the rest of their lives. $10,000. That's all it takes.
Well, compared to laundry and cabbage soup, that's probably pretty good.
True. I mean, look, $10,000 would turn their lives around.
I mean, I don't know what the inflation rate was. What 1970?
I don't know.
$10,000.
I just think that's hilarious. And then we have the dancing scene. Charlie goes home, and Grandpa Joe, after 20 lazy years in bed,
after 20 years of lazily sucking off Mom and Charlie, jumps out of bed and dances around for the golden ticket.
Now, if you want to look at this from a nice perspective, he has hope. And Charlie is losing hope as well. The mom looks like she's 60, even though she's actually 41. And they're living in a hovel. So, he has...
Finally, he has motivation to get up and to be strong, I guess. You could think of it that way.
Yes. And then they have to be at the factory the next day. So now we finally...
get to the factory.
Finally, after Act 1 with just kind of Charlie's sad life, and Act 2 with getting the team together, now we have Act 3 at the factory.
Yes. And they all are, we open up with them all there at 10 o'clock in the morning like they're supposed to be. There's marching bands, there's reporters, there's a crowd, and the door opens at 10 o'clock on the dot.
And we also have, I think this was really smart on the part of the filmmakers, a lot of, Charlie's house is quite gray and dingy. There's a lot of dirt there. But a lot of the colors are those 70s, like avocado and, or the burnt orange. But here, we have a lot of color. The kids, Veruca is in a bright red dress. Violet is in a violet dress. Mike TV's in yellow. Charlie's in navy. And then Willy Wonka comes out and he's in purple. So we have, like, kind of, even before the full color inside the factory, we get, like, a little bit of a costume change, a little bit more color added in, which I thought was really smart.
Yeah.
On the part of the filmmakers.
And then you have the entrance of Willy Wonka.
Okay.
Gene Wilder comes in on a cane, acting very old, acting very impaired. He has to limp with the cane down the steps, and he comes, it's this long, kind of slow progression down this red carpet until he's 10 feet from the gate, and he sticks his cane in a cobblestone, and he goes to take a step, and the cane stays, and he moves without it. And you see him kind of look up, and then he falls and somersaults forward, jumping up and showing that he's very spry and very, it's still athletic and kind of youthful.
Fantastic.
And fantastic. And it completely, puts the crowd, the kids, all think it's amazing. And it was a phenomenal entrance.
And you were telling me something about that as a choice, that wasn't in the script originally?
Gene Wilder was very strongly, he wanted that to be.
And I think this is, again, another thing that the kids did not know. Because he wanted their genuine reactions.
Right.
I'm guessing he didn't film that more than one or two times.
Gene Wilder definitely wanted this to be. And now Gene Wilder is widely known for his improv.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely.
He was allowed to improv in Blazing Saddles. Half of his lines were just him.
Yeah.
Right, and he actually caught a lot of his actors off guard in the middle of scenes. He's just widely known for it, and this was something he came up with, and it really makes sense. And Gene Wilder stuck by wanting it to stay in the film because it basically shows you for the rest of the film that Willy Wonka can't be trusted. Right?
Yes.
He's more than he seems.
Yes, there's something else going on there, and you don't know what to expect the whole time. Which makes the wonders more wonderful and the horrors more horrific, basically. So, yeah, I think for me that was a huge highlight going in. And then, we get a little piece where there's a signing of a contract and blah, blah, blah. And so, again, it kind of feels like even though there's a reason for that, it feels like it takes a long time.
And I'm not sure if it was in the script, or I think it was probably allowed for Gene Wilder to do a little improv, but there's going back and forth between the parents and him during the contract signing.
Yes.
And one of the moms, I think Mike TV's mom, says something about, is there an indemnity? Is there an injury clause or something like that? And he says, never between friends. And he just keeps, having the kids sign this stuff.
Yeah, and Mike, this was one of my favorite lines that is a throwaway line. Mike TV goes, he's signing, and he goes, saw this in a movie once. Guy had his wife sign an insurance policy. Then he bumped her off.
Gene Wilder goes, clever.
Clever, yes, that's right, clever. What's hilarious is because they kind of do get bumped off one by one after they sign the contract. But one of the things I also noticed here is that Charlie is the only one who asks. So he turns to his grandfather and says, "What do you think, Grandpa? Should I sign it?" All the other kids are like, "Get out of my way!" And their
Grandpa
parents,
Joe says, "We got nothing to lose."
Yeah, all the other parents tell the kids no, and they do it anyway.
Yeah.
But I think that that's kind of interesting. If Grandpa Joe had said no, maybe Charlie would not have done it. But the fact is that he cares about his family, right? But we have this thing where they go into the hall. And Willy Wonka, they do this great thing with forced perspective and making them look like they're shrinking and things like that. And he plays this little tune, and this woman, I guess this was an improv, she goes, Rachmaninoff. It's not Rachmaninoff.
It's not Rachmaninoff at all.
It's not. But I think we get a little bit of Gene Wilder here, and not, like, more than acting, like his actual self, because he is so excited. He turns and he's like, I'm about to share this with you. And he knows that he's about to open this door for something.
And they've never seen it.
And they've never seen it. And you can just see, like, the smile and the glint in his eye. And it's so much fun. And then we open up on the room. And finally, we get the payout.
He says, we're about to see the chocolate room. He says, now everything in this is edible. You can eat it.
Yeah. But they go in, and it is, I remember this as a kid, and it's pretty spectacular as an adult, although I don't remember the remake, but I feel like you could probably shine it up today.
The remake uses special effects and CGI. It's not the same.
But this is it's amazing. And
there's an indoor chocolate river with a waterfall.
Yes.
Everything you see the kids grabbing things that are all edible.
It's not just the kids, though. The adults become like kids. And there have been these horrible adults, and the one you see taking a long, like, Twizzler red vine and biting into the middle of it. Mike TV's mom goes over to a big toadstool, and there's, like, cream in the little white dots on the fake toadstool, and she, like, starts eating it. Yeah. And apparently they just filmed their real reactions because they are just so excited. Yeah. Veruca, the girl who plays Veruca, has to bust into this, like, watermelon looking thing as she starts eating the jam out of it with her hands. Oh my goodness.
Violet is, like, trying to jump up and grab stuff out of trees, and so's Mike TV, and Gene Wilder walks by nonchalantly, doesn't even look at him, and hits the tree with his cane, and things fall out.
Yes, like a little piñata. And it's just so much fun. And I do think that the beginning part could be tightened up, but it really, there is a payout.
And
there is a payout.
There's twofold here. It's an amazing sight. You see all this stuff, and the kid in you, even as an adult, is like, oh my gosh.
And your imagination.
And at the same time, Gene Wilder sings If You Want to View Paradise, which is one of the best songs.
It really is. This movie really is hit or miss with songs, I think. The Candyman is an amazing song. This song, If You Want to View Paradise, Simply Look Around and View It. It's so beautiful. And that compared to some of the other kind of stinkers.
And we have Cheer Up Charlie.
We have Cheer Up Charlie and a few other ones that are just not quite as good. But yeah, it's the whimsy and the excitement of it is set off by him singing. You're getting that this is this guy's dream, and he has been building this place to help bring dreams to life, but nobody's seen it for 20 years but him.
It's also phenomenal. Gene Wilder, again, I can't say so much about him, but his acting in this is phenomenal because you have all these parents and kids and everyone in this room just going nuts and freaking out, and their eyes are so huge, filled with wonder. And Gene Wilder is nonchalantly walking through the room. It's not new to him. No. It's amazing, but he's more amazed by their reactions.
Yes. And a little bit of melancholy because he knows how horrible 4 out of the 5 of these kids are, right? But also that, this is like his baby. This is the thing he's been working on for a really long time.
And he sits and drinks the teacup tulip and then crunches it and then eats it.
And do you know that's one of the only things that wasn't? He improv'd that, and it was made of wax, so he just kept eating it. Yeah, apparently apparently he was just like doing it anyway. Like once he did it, he was like, now I have to go with it, which is just such a fun choice. But yeah, so we have that. It's amazing. And then Augustus gets taken.
Yeah, Augustus starts drinking out of the chocolate river, and Willy Wonka says, "No, don't! You can't touch my chocolate. Can't be touched by human hands when it's in the river. Stop!" And then Augustus falls in,
and that's the only time he really cares about what they're doing because he's contaminating this chocolate. All the other times he's like, "No, stop!"
And Augustus's mom's going, "My boy, my boy!" And Willy Wonka's going, "My chocolate, my chocolate!"
And again, Charlie, the only one who tries to help. He takes over a big lollipop and he tries to get Augustus to grab it. So that's kind of fun.
But it's too late. Augustus gets pulled under and into the tube. So
then we get to the creepy boat scene. The boat takes us into the inventing room. The boat just, oh man, as a kid that creeped me out. I wish I had remembered about it.
I wish I knew what the reason for that scene, like, I like it.
I asked that too.
I like it. The boat is amazing. The paddle boat's beautiful. It's amazing. Going on the chocolate river is neat looking. But then I'm not sure if it was just to throw everyone off and make them seem like, who is Wonka? Like, what is this? Because you have this amazing chocolate room, this amazing factory, and then, like, these weird horrors as the boat feels like it's speeding through a tunnel.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, it's a very dated choice because I feel it feels, and this is the same thing I'm going to say about the TV room later. There are some movies from, like, the 60s and 70s that have these types of scenes. And think about, like, I know it's before this, but, like, Dumbo with, like, pink elephants on parade. They have, like, a weird psychedelic kind of scene. And I would ask the same thing. I'm not sure why it's there, other than to have a juxtaposition. And also to make you question as a viewer what actually is happening to these kids. Like, are they kind of getting really what they deserve, or are they going to be okay? But yeah, the boat scene to me is a real low. Then we come to the inventing room, which I never loved as much as the chocolate room, but now watching it back, I'm like, how fun. There's a lot of puns, and he sings this little song. I don't know if it was written or if he came up with it, but I sing it a lot. I turned to Steve and I was like, I sing this song a lot. Springtime, the pretty thing time, birds love to sing a ding a ding. That little thing. I don't know. It just, for some reason, it's this song that gets stuck in my head, and when it's springtime, I sometimes like find myself humming it. But some of my highlights here: he's putting a coat into a batch that's too cold. He puts sneakers in to
give it a little kick.
Yeah, different little things like that. So it just shows you like his very inventive process.
And of course, that's the unveiling of the everlasting Gobstopper, is in the inventing room. And he allows each kid to take one with the promise that they never give it to anyone or speak a word of it to anyone.
I feel like one of the things here, again, he says it's for kids with very little pocket money. So it's for kids like Charlie. And it shows this little bit, and also the bit where he's explaining how the Oompa Loompas came to be with him. That he took those couple years and traveled and found these Oompa Loompas who were basically being enslaved and being mistreated and brought them to...
They were being hunted by animals.
Yeah.
They were being eaten.
Yeah, sorry, different versions of it I'm thinking of. But yeah, they were being hunted by animals. But he brings them into this factory, and it does show his compassion, that he knows that not every kid can buy a Wonka bar. So he wants to make something for them. But I loved all the little machines and the bibs and bobs and the squeaks and stuff like that. And then we come to the second kid being bumped off, Miss Violet Beauregard.
Violet Beauregard, yes.
The 3-course dinner gum, I was like obsessed with this idea.
And that's at the end of the invention room, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with this idea that, I love the joke here. He goes, it's a full 3-course meal. And the one parent goes, bull. And he goes, no, roast beef.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's roast beef, right? Then mashed potatoes?
Mashed potatoes with gravy, and then the dessert. Which unfortunately...
Which is blueberry pie.
Yes, blueberry pie. But it's so... The way that she starts slowly turning blue and then blowing up to be a blueberry.
And the great thing, too, is why Gene Wilder's Willy Wonka... she grabs it, and he always warns them and says, I wouldn't do that. And then as they are doing it, he's like, stop, no. Okay, like he knew they weren't going to listen.
Yeah.
And she turns into a blueberry.
She turns into a blueberry and gets taken out. And then we have the lickable wallpaper.
Awesome.
Again, reminds me of like those scratch and sniff stickers that we had as kids, or like the smelly markers, but this you can actually taste, and the snozberries taste like snozberries.
Yes.
Apparently that's from a different book where it was used in an entirely different way, I won't say.
Okay.
You can look it up. Look up snozberries and see the origin of that. But he's got these great aphorisms throughout the same thing. He grabs her face and he says, "We are the music makers and we are the dreamers of dreams."
Right, and she says that snozberries don't exist.
Yeah, who ever heard of a snozberry?
Yeah.
But those little nuggets, those little, like, almost like proverbs that he's dropping in throughout.
Willy Wonka's a dreamer.
He is.
Yeah.
And it's a funny moment, and then it's also a weirdly sweet moment at the same time.
And the point is also that anything's possible in his factory.
Yes, and I wrote in my notes, every line is gold.
Yes.
And then Grandpa Joe is a troublemaker.
Yep, then Charlie and Grandpa Joe do something they're not supposed to.
But if you notice, it's not Charlie who says, "Hey, Willy Wonka said not to drink this, let's drink it anyway." Grandpa Joe says, "Let's just take some, they won't notice."
Yeah, he says, "Nobody's looking, let's drink some."
Yeah.
So he actually
the fizzy
causes
lifting
it,
drink.
And they drink the little fizzy lifting drink, and they almost get chopped up, but then they are saved by burping.
Yes, which is so gross.
And
it's horrible fake burping, too. It's like,
Yes. And they catch up with Willy Wonka and the rest of the group just in time to see the golden gooses.
Yeah, if I'm remembering from the book, I haven't read the book in a while. I do have a copy of it, but I think that in the book these are squirrels. But I think that it was at that point especially, and I think they did squirrels in the remake, but at that point it would have been harder to do a fake squirrel than a fake goose.
They have these huge fake gooses that lay golden chocolate eggs.
And they're octupled in size.
The goose are quadrupled, the eggs are octupled.
Yeah, exactly. Which is so funny. A little nonsense now and then is relished by the wisest men. We get another aphorism here. But Veruca, I noticed, she's the only kid who has a song. We have songs with the Oompa Loompas, and we have before Charlie and his grandpa and all that. But she's the only other child who has a song. She has a great voice for a kid her age.
I Want It Now.
I Want It Now. I had to look up Bean Feast. I never understood that as a kid.
And then, of course,
I want a Bean Feast.
Yeah.
What the heck is a bean? A Bean Feast is in England. It is a party or special occasion, usually given by employers for their workers, their employees.
And she's not a worker. She has never lifted a finger, but she wants a bean feast.
Right, so she's treating her dad
as her boss.
Yeah, well, I mean, she's his boss, basically, right? And he goes, "Oh, one of those. Like, she's had this before."
Yeah.
And also, my other thing that I love in this song is that she says, "And I want to wear all of my braids in my hair, and I don't want to share." And I looked at Steve and I go, "Why is she not sharing her braids? Why would that even be a thing?"
I wonder, is it supposed to be, "I want to wear my braids in my hair," and then separately, "I don't want to share with anyone"?
It's definitely separate.
But you're right, it sounds together.
It sounds like she doesn't want to share her braids, and I'm like, yeah, don't share your braids. Like, those you can have.
But she ends up jumping up on the egg scale, and it says
egg.
bad, and it drops her to the incinerator.
And she sings because she wants a golden goose, and Willy Wonka, probably for the first time in her life, goes, she can't have one.
Yeah, she can't. The dad says, "What's your price?" He says, "They're not for sale."
Yeah.
Just because he knows that.
But what I love about that is he doesn't explain it. He's just like, "No, she can't have one.
She can't have one."
It's a straight up no.
And that's when she goes into her singing tantrum.
And destroys his room.
Then she gets dropped down into the incinerator shaft, and the dad jumps after her, and Grandpa Joe says, "Well, he got what he wanted. Veruca went first."
Again, there are just these little jokes through the whole thing. It's so great. And we haven't talked about the Oompa Loompa songs. They're cute. They're basically teaching kids the lesson of what
was wrong with the kid that.
And as you said, it's almost like the 7 deadly sins, right? Like what their sin was, and they mention a couple times that the parents are to blame.
Yeah.
That this is the fault of the parents. And we go to the TV room. Ugh. Okay. Yeah. The TV room. This is kind of a low for me. I love Veruca's song. and the TV room kind of like takes that energy out a little bit. But again, it's this very 60s, 70s thing where like the future, everything is white. Like white walls, white clothes. It looks a lot, if you watch, which I don't care for, the movie version of The Little Prince that was made around this time.
I didn't see that. But...
or Clockwork Orange.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff looks very similar to that.
It's
like a mod. It's a mixture between mod and futuristic. But Mike gets taken up into the TV, and now he's miniature, and Willy Wonka goes, well, we'll just take him to the taffy room and have him pulled, just like Violet was de-juiced.
He says, young boys like this are still growing, and they're stretchy. We'll bring them to the taffy room.
But what I love is the mom, the actress's choice here to do the classic cross-eyed faint, which I only have really seen in like, I don't think that's done like past the 90s, but a couple movies in the 70s, a lot in the 80s. Like, oh.
Yeah. Well, he hands Mike in the purse to the Oompa Loompa and says, bring him to the taffy room and have him stretched. And the Oompa Loompa grabs him and whispers something, and Willy Wonka goes, no, I won't hold you accountable.
Yeah. And that's when she kind of faints there. And then we are left just with Charlie. So we come to the end of the movie.
They walk out, and Willy Wonka basically gives him a very curt, that's it. Okay, you're done. And I got stuff to do. He pulls out paperwork and says, I have bills and letters to write.
And poor little Charlie, he's so heartbroken. He's like, did we do something wrong? And I was like, oh, you did, but I feel bad for you.
And so Grandpa Joe and Charlie go into his office.
Which we need to talk about the set dressing for this office. It's so brilliant.
It's phenomenal. Everything's in half.
Everything is in half.
Half a sink, half a clock.
Wait, including the safe, which has half a lock on it.
Yes, he just opens the door. He doesn't even unlock it.
So great. It's so great. It doesn't even need to be opened. It's like an open bookshelf instead of a safe. Half a head for the hat to sit on.
Yes.
It's really a fun,
and there's never an explanation why everything in this room is a half.
No, they never tell you why. Oh. It's just such a fun, like, set dressing choice.
It's an interesting scene because Grandpa Joe comes in kind of upset with Charlie and says, hey, where's his lifetime supply of chocolate? And you see a different Willy Wonka. Willy Wonka turns angrily and snaps. He says, I'm busy. What do you want? And he says, lifetime supply of chocolate. And he says, he doesn't get any. You lost.
Yeah,
and then he says, you signed the contract. You drank fizzy lifting root. You hit the top of my fan. Now it has to be cleaned. Like, you basically didn't follow the rules like you were supposed to. You lose.
Having said that, when watching it this time, I was wondering if he's pretty sure that Charlie's going to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if this is Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka trying to be acting a little bit over the top to push them to this point to see really what he's going to do. Because it's not real anger, which kind of builds.
100%, but it looks it.
It looks, yeah. He's he's screaming, and then Grandpa Joe yells back, "You're a crook!"
Yeah.
And I think this is interesting because he says to Charlie as they're going out, if Mr. Slugworth wants that, we're just going to give it to him. And that's when Charlie, again, the same beat that he took before when he bought the Wonka bar for his grandfather, he takes a beat again and he does the right thing.
He turns around, he walks over, and he sets the everlasting Gobstopper on the desk and just says, Mr. Wonka, and then walks away.
Yeah, and it as if to kind of say, like, I know that you're mad at me. I understand that what I did was wrong, but I'm not going to betray you anyway.
Yeah.
Because he has really idolized this guy through the whole time.
Yeah.
The other kids are like, this place is crazy. And he's like, I think it's brilliant.
Right. And Willy Wonka is like, these kids are terrible. And Charlie and his grandpa are like, these kids are terrible.
Yeah. And also, we forgot to mention the little machine that they take that spits out all the cream as they're going to the TV room. But even that, he's like, Grandpa, but he like enjoys it. He finds it funny. And Willy Wonka says, why, if God wanted us to walk, he wouldn't have invented roller skates.
Yes.
It's those little things that Charlie has appreciated the whole time, and he really admires this guy. So then when he gives it to him, Willy Wonka's like, Charlie, I knew you would do it, my boy. And he scoops him up and he tells him that he did the right thing and he's going to get the chocolate factory. And they go in the great glass elevator and now they're looking down on the town.
On the factory, on the town.
And it is like a fairy tale.
He basically says, bring your whole family, I'm giving you... And he explains that he decided many years ago that when his time came to retire, he had to give the chocolate factory to a child because an adult would want to do things their way.
Yeah, and so you get the idea that over the next few years, he's going to train Charlie up and teach him everything he knows, and then when he's ready to retire, he'll retire.
Right.
And Charlie can take care of the Oompa Loompas, and he can be the creator of all these wonderful, imaginative things. And I guess now, saying that, he says, like, whatever happened to... the boy who dreamed, he got everything he ever wanted. It is a lot like a fairy tale.
It is.
So like a real Grimm's fairy tale, you have...
terrible things happening to children.
The terrible things happening to children and the darkness.
And he does reassure Charlie and say all the kids will leave just like they came.
That
They'll
was
be fine.
Yeah, to talk about the remake, one thing I did like about the remake was that they showed the kids all coming out of the factory. Now Violet's still blue and Mike TV is like stretched and flat, but they all do come out, right? But yeah, he gets everything he ever wanted, and he and his family are going to live happily ever after, and that's it. Credits roll, and we never get a sequel.
Never.
Because Roald Dahl did not like this movie, apparently.
And I don't think I would want one now, to be honest, because I think it has to have Gene Wilder. I can't imagine someone else could be that.
No, and look,
Although, you know what and this is weird, this is a crazy thought, and I don't think it would work. But it's funny because now as an adult and seeing a lot of different things in movies I've seen now, I'm watching Gene Wilder, and with the quip and the undertone in the quip, I'm looking at it and going, Gene Wilder was a 1970s Ryan Reynolds. It's that kind of sarcastic, happy-go-lucky quip. But
Ryan Reynolds always plays Ryan Reynolds.
Right.
The problem with the remake really was the fact that you didn't have Gene Wilder. I actually thought that the casting of the kids was pretty good. Some of them are still acting now, and they're amazing.
Yes.
They're amazing actors. But Johnny Depp made a choice, and he chooses basically to do an impression of Michael Jackson in his latter days, and it doesn't work. It's very creepy.
Terrible. It's creepy. It's terrible. Tim Burton doesn't do a great job.
They added a bunch of stuff.
It's a bad pairing with a story that should...
They added a bunch of stuff about fathers and how Willy Wonka didn't have a family and that he doesn't want Charlie to bring his family. No, the whole point is that Willy Wonka made a family out of these Oompa Loompas. He's bringing Charlie into that family and his family members with him.
And Johnny Depp's Willy Wonka is completely unlikable.
It's not like,
even when Gene Wilder's being a jerk, he's a likable Willy Wonka.
Yeah, and you're rooting for him and he's being a jerk, mostly against jerky kids. So Roald Dahl didn't like the movie. What did other people think? Reception
of Willy Wonka and Chocolate Factory. First off, it was made in 1971 or came out in 71.
Yep.
It cost $3 million to make. It boxed $4 million, so it made money. And even in the 70s, $4 million is pretty decent. But
$3 million to make is not a lot for that gorgeous chocolate room. That's surprising.
They made it in Germany, and again, it's 1971.
Yeah, that's true.
Right, it's a lot earlier.
Yeah, so it made $1 million total.
My thought is probably it's the effects that are costing so much.
Yeah, probably.
$3 million.
Yeah.
But it made $4 million in its release and its first run, basically. Mm-hmm. It had a decent reviewing. There were some people that thought it was phenomenal. Roger Ebert gave it 4 out of 4 stars.
Oh, okay.
And he was. I have a quote here. Roger Ebert said, "Probably the best film of its sort since The Wizard of Oz. It is everything that family movies should or usually claim to be, but aren't. Delightful, funny, scary, exciting, and most of all, a genuine work of imagination. Willy Wonka is such a surely and wonderfully spun fantasy that it works on all kinds of minds. And it is fascinating because, like all classic fantasy, it is fascinated with itself."
And it is shown a lot at the same time as Wizard of Oz, which we talked about earlier. Yeah, so he hated Splash, but he loved this. That's interesting to me.
The Los Angeles Times praised the film, said it was lively and enjoyable. They said Wilder's performance was a real star turn. Mm-hmm. They thought the songs were instantly forgettable, which is interesting. Well, they're grouping them together, I guess.
I mean,
So interestingly enough, it had a decent... There's a few people that thought it was kind of campy, but a lot of people did care for it. Now, it's debuted in 71. It makes its first run. It makes $4 million, and then it sort of dies off until the early 1980s, where it gets a cult following.
Right.
And as you said, people our age... It was on TV. It was shown again, and all of a sudden, it makes a huge it's a little jump
bit
back.
Like The Christmas Story. I don't think The Christmas Story did great, like at the box office, but then it was shown every Christmas on TBS over and over and over. You know, it's one of those kind of things.
And now the original, the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 1971, has a 91% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay, so let's see if we agree. We rated the candy 1 out of 5 golden tickets. Here we're going to do 1 out of 10, like the original book. What do you think? 1 out of 10.
Tickets. There's a few pieces to it that I think, Cheer Up Charlie. There's some pieces to this that are slow, especially in the beginning. It's interesting because Roger Ebert, said it was great. Gene Siskel gave it 2 stars, and part of the reason was he said that there's a huge build-up. There's such a build-up to the Chocolate Factory that it's tough for that to live up to it once you get there. And it's kind of a rush. It's like a third act.
Yeah.
But even besides all that, I think that Gene Wilder's performance is phenomenal. I think the kids do a good job. I think the Chocolate Factory in itself is awesome. So most of the songs that we pointed out were good, right? If you want to view Paradise and the Candyman, those two in themselves are bang on, and just the entire concept of the morals of the entire story. I think I got to give it a 9 out of 10.
Oh my goodness, Steve Hall, we are once again on the same page. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 as well, for pretty much the same reasons. I wish that we had spent more time in the Chocolate Factory. Yeah. I think that it does feel a little rushed, and I think that the first part does feel a little slow. But, if you edited this down to a tight hour 30, I think that it would be a different movie, but it might work a little bit better. As it stands, it has some flaws, but the kids are great. The singing is very good. The Oompa Loompas are fun. The ways that the kids get picked off, if you've never watched it before, you're like, oh, what's going to happen to the next one? Yeah. And how are they going to be, it's not, we talked about this with Leprechaun, it's like, how are they going to creatively kill off the character? They're not killed. But, it's just a wonderful movie.
I've said before in a number of our podcasts, a lot of times when I rate things, I'll say, this is something that I would let my kids watch.
Yeah.
This is something that not only would I let my kids watch, but it would be one of those annual things. Let's watch Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
Like Wizard of Oz.
And
I think Roger Ebert hit it right on the head.
I would say, too, here's one of the other things about this, other than the TV scene and some of the tech, like the way the TVs look,
right?
The way the microphones look, the computer scene, certainly. Outside of that, it really feels classic because they did film it in Germany. And so you do have some of these 70s touches, but especially once you get into the factory, it holds up today.
The factory holds up because everything is imaginary.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of there's the TV thing, but even that is transporting people. It's not TV.
It's almost like watching an animated film where like Disney classic animation never feels dated to me.
Right.
So, pause for our big sound effect.
Yeah.
9 out of 10 golden tickets for Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. We're going to link on our blog the links for the Everlasting Gobstoppers, and also one of the... Oh, you know what? I'm going to link the book, too. I'll put a link for the book in case anybody wants to read the book, and I will also link where you can watch the movie on streaming, although we had to watch it on DVD this week.
Yes,
but you can watch it on streaming, and that'll be linked on our blog, Watch With Us, which you can find at StopRuiningMyChildhood.com. Next week, we are watching Muppet Babies. And after that, we're going to watch Little House on the Prairie. So we're starting our cycle over again, and those are our choices coming up for cartoon and live action. But as Steve said, if you are watching along with us, if you are listening to this podcast, if you know us personally, send us a text. And if you're not and you're on Facebook or Twitter, drop us a line. Let us know what you'd like us to watch, because we are open to suggestions.
Go to our Stop Ruining My Childhood Facebook page, which we have, and drop us a suggestion. Yeah, you can put it in a comment on one of our posts, or you can DM us. Either way. So we'd love to hear from you guys. And until next week, we hope that we'll hope that you have a great week. I'll put it that way. Thanks, everybody. I'm Megan, and I'm Steve.
Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.